Hello and welcome to the Minute Mastery Podcast, a place where busy people create time for what truly matters. I'm your host, Ngozi Edema, a time management coach, a writer, and entrepreneur. Here you are encouraged to turn your minutes into milestones and to create at least 1 hour a day to work on your goals without feeling overwhelmed. But before we dive into today's episode, hello, mamas and papas in the house. What do you want in a storybook? Here are my top things that I look for when I'm buying a storybook. Number one, they must be relatable. Number two, they should teach important lessons. Number three, they should have great illustrations. Number four, they should be fun to read. Check out Freddy and the Veggies. It has beautiful illustrations with a relatable story designed to get little picky eaters to consider their veggies as friends while hanging out with their sweet friends too. Freddy and the Veggies is available on Amazon both in Kindle and paperback formats. In today's episode, we are tackling a challenge many entrepreneurs face, whether it's endless notifications, competing priorities, or the never-ending to-do list. Distractions can derail productivity and slow down progress. And if ADHD is in the mix, it makes it even more challenging. Joining me in today's episode is Cindy Baker. Cindy grew up with undiagnosed ADHD. She worked very hard to compensate for its symptoms like procrastination, forgetfulness, trouble with focus and motivation, and feeling overwhelmed. But today, she runs a coaching and education company, helping entrepreneurs cope with the very things she struggled with. You're welcome to the show, Sydney.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself. What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm a productivity coach and an ADHD strategist, and I work with entrepreneurs and other small business owners and creative professionals, just helping them overcome overwhelm, helping them manage their time and their focus and energy so they can grow their business. I have a group coaching program and many other services.
Wow. I did an interview a few hours ago, and it's kind of related to ADHD as well, but from another perspective. Would you say it's a very common thing today, ADHD?
Well, at least among entrepreneurs, it is. I read somewhere that over 60% of entrepreneurs have ADHD. Now, I don't know how accurate that was, but I do know that there are a lot of people who work for themselves that have ADHD. I think it just fits them. So a lot of people, when I was growing up, we didn't hear about it much. And when it was talked about, it was always just with boys, ill-behaved boys. And so a quiet, smart girl wasn't really on anybody's radar, and so I wasn't diagnosed until I was an adult. And that, I think that's the case with a lot of people now. They're figuring it out as an adult, and they're getting the diagnosis late in life.
Mm. I know in the community I grew up in Africa. ADHD was not even a thing that was mentioned when I was growing up. Nobody knew about that. And so when you struggle with distractions, symptoms like procrastination or forgetfulness, like you mentioned earlier on, you might be seen as lazy.
Yeah. And a lot of people do get negative labels because people don't understand that their brain just works a little bit differently. But there are strategies that can be used to overcome those challenges, and that's what I help people with. The difference is just that they need to be ADHD friendly strategies. The typical time management gurus teach methods that really don't work for the way an ADHD brain is wired. people who have ADHD have a different awareness of time than other people. They live in now or not now, and that's it. So if something is, say, due in 2 months, then their brain says, oh, 2 months, that's not now, so I don't have to think about it. And then they just forget about it. And then 2 months goes by and the deadline is looming and they freak out because they've got to do all this stuff at the last minute, because they just don't think about something that's not right now in their immediate vicinity. That's an oversimplified explanation, but the people with ADHD do struggle with time management. They call it time blindness.
I'm so happy that there's this awareness today that wasn't there before. And I do hope that a lot of people will take advantage of programs like what you run to be able to help themselves get through this type of difficult situation. Because it's not, if people have a disability, maybe someone is blind or someone is on a wheelchair, people are more sympathetic to people like that. But if you have ADHD, which I consider as a disability as well, but it's something internal, so people don't see it. And if you don't see it, you're not likely going to be sympathetic to anyone that is going through it. So I'm very happy that there's this awareness and help that people can tap into and find solutions or find a way of working around the problem. I don't know if there's a total elimination of the problem, but you can find a way to work around it and still live.
Yeah. And I think, so many people try to just focus on the negative, and it is important to learn to manage the challenges that come with ADHD, but there are a lot of strengths that come as well. And so in my coaching program, we talk about what I call 3P power: positive, prepared, productive. And that positive is really important because I believe everybody was created on purpose, for purpose. And the way our brain is wired is going to allow us to see things differently and solve problems that maybe other people miss. And a lot of very successful, creative people, entrepreneurs, artists, musicians have ADHD, and they attribute their success to the different way their brain works. So I think it's important to leverage your strengths. Some people even say ADHD is their superpower. And, you might have heard that.
So it can actually, yeah.
Yeah, it can give you a competitive edge if you learn how to work with it, with the way your brain is wired, instead of fighting against it, trying to be somebody that you're not. There are some so-called support groups out there that are just full of people that want to complain and whine and blame all of their problems on ADHD, and that people don't understand them. And I guess I just feel like, everybody has issues, right? Yeah. And you need to go around expecting everybody to understand. Somebody who doesn't have ADHD isn't going to understand, and that's okay. We don't have to have everybody
to understand.
To understand us completely at all times.
Mm-hmm. So what inspired you to go this route of helping distracted entrepreneurs? Is it your own personal experience?
Yes. So my background was kind of different. I started out in youth ministry, and then got into education, and I had a master's in counseling. So I started as a school counselor and then moved into being a teacher and have various roles. So I was working with a lot of adolescents that had ADHD and their parents. And I started to think, I recognize these symptoms. I think I have this. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized, adults are getting diagnosed now. And I didn't even know that was a thing. But I went and got my diagnosis as an adult. And so I began to just, selfishly, out of curiosity for myself, just learn everything I could about adult ADHD. And I, read books and learned everything I could and tried different strategies, figured out what worked, what didn't. kind of put a framework together and built some habits and systems and routines, and became very successful. I went from chaos and being all over the place, having a million different jobs and no stability, to having a long-term successful career as an educator, 19 years. And I just recently retired, married the love of my life. I'm a grandma, and I started and am running a successful business, all while having ADHD. So I say that not to brag, but just to let your listeners know that they can do that too. If they're not successful, it's probably because no one has shown them how before. And so that's what I help people with. I help them learn how to understand the way the ADHD is affecting their lives, and how to work with it. And I don't just work with ADHD people, but it's interesting. I found out that these ADHD friendly strategies work with other people too.
I know for myself, I worry so much when I have too many things to do. I get distracted and go somewhere else for me to calm myself down, and I end up getting what I need to do. I don't know if that is part of ADHD, but I don't have, I mean, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I noticed that most of the things they talk about when I listen to anything related to ADHD kind of resonates with me. I want things to be done. I want a bit of structure, and I want things to be done bit by bit and in a way that I can, cope with things while leveraging what's the kind of person that I am without being overwhelmed by everything that I need to do. So I mean, I love the kind of perspective, the insight that I'm getting, the education that I'm getting with regards to coping with this situation. So what are the common challenges that entrepreneurs you've noticed that they face with ADHD, and how does your program help them to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, we mentioned time management. So procrastination, getting overcommitted in your schedule, not saying no, not knowing how to prioritize, having this giant to-do list and everything looks equally important. Managing distractions is a big one, especially the phone. Very big distraction. Learning how to maintain, or how to get and maintain focus on the right things, clarity. Sometimes clutter is an issue, not just physical clutter, but digital clutter, like on their computer. So those are just some of the things. Some people have trouble managing their emotions, and they have trouble with communicating because they can tend to be impulsive, are not a good listener. They forget things. Yeah.
So how does your coaching program work?
There is a membership portal where there's recorded trainings on everything from time management to clutter to decision-making, communication, working from home, all of these things. And then we meet on Zoom, where we do different things. There's sometimes like we're actually meeting Monday, and we're going to go through a process where we're planning for the year, because it won't be January Monday, but it's still January today. And so we do activities together like that sometimes. And then sometimes we just go around and share wins and challenges and goals for the week, hold each other accountable. People, we troubleshoot if people are having issues. So it's kind of like they can learn from the training, but then they can process it on the Zoom calls. And I have different levels in the coaching program. At the higher level, they get more access to me and more. We have quarterly trainings and some one-on-ones and things like that.
You mentioned accountability. Do you think accountability works with people with ADHD? Because I notice that sometimes people run away from accountability. They don't They feel like
Mhm.
it gives them pressure of that they have to report and track things that they do. I mean, I see it as a help, but sometimes
Mhm.
people see it as it makes them more anxious when you ask them to
Mhm.
account for, okay, how did you do this? How did you do this? What can you do differently? So more and more people are
Yeah.
running away from that sort of
Yeah,
solution.
that's a good question. I think it depends on how it's handled. And I always tell prospective clients, I say, there's gentle accountability because you have to remember I have ADHD too. So I get it. I understand there's a lot of grace, but I am going to try to move them forward. Ultimately, when someone goes through my coaching program, they would outcome would be that they would know how to hold themselves accountable, keep promises to themselves. And so sometimes that starts with having another person hold them accountable. But there's no shame. Shaming never works. And that includes yourself too, not beating yourself up for, um,
Meeting up.
each day is a new day. You move forward and you may take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, but you're still gaining some traction. So yeah, I think accountability works, but ultimately you have to learn how to be accountable to yourself. And that's why sometimes people struggle as entrepreneurs because they don't have, they're their own boss. So if they have to do something, they have to set an appointment on their calendar and treat it just like you would go into a doctor appointment. You wouldn't stand up the doctor, so don't stand up yourself. If you say you're going to do something, do it at that time. And that's a learning process. It takes a while to get that habit down.
So, for someone listening, what daily habits or routines do you recommend for maintaining focus and reducing overwhelm? Because for someone with ADHD, for instance, they're already overwhelmed by so many things.
Well, a couple of things that help. When you do start to feel overwhelmed, I do what I call a brain dump, where I just write down everything that I'm trying to remember, everything I got to do, everything's worrying me. Just put it all, it doesn't have to be organized, just put it all on paper. And what that does is that it gets it out of your head and you can look at it more objectively, but also you don't feel that burden to have to remember it because it's all written here. I can look at it. I don't have to be distracted by, oh, I got to remember this or I got to remember that. So that's one thing. Each day, write down the top 3 things that need to happen that are the most important things that, if you're a business owner, things that move the needle in your business. Um, Obviously, you've heard that 20% of your work produces 80% of the results. Well, focus on that 20% and don't waste a lot of time on the 80%. Some of that could be delegated or automated or even taken off your list. So I say 3 because it's enough um, to get you going, but it's not too much. And if you finish the 3, you can always move on to other things. And then I teach my clients to do kind of these focused sprints where it works with your energy level. So you would set a timer, you get rid of all the distractions, put your phone in the other room, set boundaries with whoever is in the house, tell them I got to focus for 60 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. And then just do deep concentration for that amount of time and then take a break. When the timer goes off, you can get up, you walk around, you know, go do whatever for 5 or 10 minutes and then come back and do another little burst. And that tends to work really well. No multitasking. That's another habit that needs to be broken. Science has done studies on it, and they say it takes 23 minutes for your brain to refocus once you've been interrupted. And so, sometimes you can't help being interrupted, but you don't want to interrupt yourself by picking up your phone when you're in the middle of something. So there's a lot of other things that we talk about, but those are just a few to kind of get people started.
Oh. 23 minutes is a lot of time. I remember back in the day when we're writing a resume for the job, we always like to let future employers know that we can multitask. But
I know.
more I'm beginning to see that the multitasking thing is not really.
It's just not effective because really what you're doing is switch tasking, is what they call it.
Mhm.
You're not really multitasking. You're doing one thing, stopping, doing another thing, doing this thing again, doing that thing. You're not really doing them all at the same time, you know?
So that means that you're not really being efficient or productive.
Right.
Moving from one task to the other, not doing any one of them properly, but
That's
just
right.
focusing on one task and finish it, then go for a break and come back to do the next task.
Mm-hmm.
More effective. Yeah. So thank you so very much for joining us here today. So if someone wants to reach you, how can they reach you? Because you have a lot to offer, and
Mm-hmm.
if they want to connect with you, how can they reach you?
Yeah. I actually have a free course that I'll give your listeners. It's on how to beat procrastination. So they can go to waitnomore.net and I'll give you these links. So they can do that. My website is cindybakercoaching.com. I have a free Facebook group. It's called Productivity for Profits. And that's a great way to get into my world. I do free training in that Facebook group every week. So they'll learn a lot by being involved in that. So those are, and I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram as CBC_Cindy Baker Coaching. So that would be a good way to reach out as well. And on LinkedIn, Cindy Baker.
So everything I'm going to put everything will be on this episode's webpage for all of you that are listening. Thank you very much, Cindy, for coming to the show. And then thank you for all those who tune in to listen to it. We benefited so much from this. And if you have found this episode helpful, please subscribe and share this episode with others who might benefit from it. Connect with Cindy through all the links that I'm going to post in this episode's show notes, and join us next time as we explore more strategies on how to optimize your time.
Thank you for having me.